What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Today we're going to be getting into some more intellectuals, talking about religion and, I guess in some ways, philosophical arguments, logical arguments, rational arguments. These are people that are the foundation of where I base my logical standpoint from. Sometimes vocabulary words not great I'm at. But anyway, this is another one. I just recently did a video on Christopher Hitchens. This is another person that has influenced me greatly. This is Matt Dillahunty. You may know him from his atheist experience co-hosting shows. He also has another program that he does on his YouTube channel. I forgot exactly what it's called, but I'll go ahead and leave a link for his YouTube channel as well, so you can go and check it out, where he talks about different arguments, and sometimes he uploads debates. I think it's called Atheist Debates, but I could be wrong. But anyway, this video is called Best of Matt Dillahunty, Amazing Arguments and Clever Comebacks. Now, you could probably make an entire video just from his segments on the atheist experience alone, but I would like to see if they pull from other areas as well, including some of his actual debates. But let's go ahead and watch this and see what it has to offer. While I sip my tea from my workout cup, makes no sense at all, but I will do it.
Hey, what about slavery? I asked, because on the third night we debated morality, and that was loads of fun. And I raised the issue of slavery because anybody who watches the show knows that it's my go-to argument. It's the one that's most obviously immoral and most clearly endorsed. Just yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. Wow, need sleeps. Just yesterday, I was at University of Texas lecturing to a class, and after it was over, I've done 2 debates with a guy by the name of Cliff Connectley at Texas State. And he happened to be at UT Austin preaching, although for some reason he doesn't want to debate me again. Maybe it's because I'm that condescending asshole guy, I don't know. But he was out there and somebody asked him about slavery, and he lied once again. And I'm not very free with accusing people of lying, but I think that's the only explanation for it after we've had this discussion, because when we talk about does the Bible endorse slavery, he goes to a passage from Paul where he's talking to his Philemon, who would runaway slave, saying, I want you to go back, and when you go back, tell your master I don't want you to be a slave anymore, that type of thing. And he thinks that this is the Bible saying that slavery is wrong.
That was just one incident.
And he says this while ignoring everything in Exodus 21 that expressly tells you who to enslave, how to enslave them, that they're worth 6 shekels, that you have to let Jewish males go after 7 years. The women you get to keep. Have to go after 7 years unless you give them a wife and kids, and then you can trick them into being your slave forever. That it expressly says that these are your property that you can pass down, that you are to buy your slaves from the heathen around you. And somehow or another, none of that matters to Cliff, because Paul wanted his slave friend to not be a slave anymore. This is the way theists will think. There's a tap dance to make the Bible say whatever they need it to say. And when we had this debate at the Church of Christ and I brought up slavery, we went through this again. And I heard several different explanations from several different preachers. One of them said, well, this was the norm at the time.
Exactly.
And God was implementing laws about slavery to soften slavery so that we would eventually realize that slavery was wrong and get...
I would go into it more. So, I mean, you guys are probably going to be wondering why I'm not talking a lot during this. Most of the things that I get from my arguments, like the things that I point out in other videos, a lot of it comes from Matt Dillahunty. So I'll let the man speak for himself. You might not hear a lot of me during this video. So, that's just a heads up for those that might be wondering, but let's go ahead and get back into it.
Soften slavery so that we would eventually realize that slavery was wrong and get rid of it.
This video was uploaded by Agatan Foundation.
He's God! If he can tell you don't kill people and don't eat shrimp, certainly he can say don't own people as property. How hard was that? What kind of weak-ass tiny God do you believe in that he can't tell you to stop owning people? Well, he was actually trying to do the right thing, because all these heathen, this was the only way that they could come to the true understanding of God, was for the Jews to go over there and enslave them so that they could teach them about Yahweh. Well, once again, he's God. What's he doing picking the Jews, not giving messages to anybody else anymore? I mean, I know that the Old Testament's a comedy of his failures where everything goes wrong, until eventually he's just down to, okay, I'm going to take this one little family and I'm going to turn it into my preferred tribe, and it's still going to go wrong, by the way. Spoiler alert, everything goes wrong for God all the way through the book. And yet somehow he thinks it's a good idea. Hey, these other people here who are not my chosen people, but I'd really like them to believe in me, why don't we enslave them? And then we can teach them about me. Go on, Moses, go do that. This is the type of tap dancing that you get when you engage in people who cannot acknowledge that the Bible might be endorsing something that's immoral, that they might be believing in something that doesn't have good reason.
On the question of whether or not why I find the question of God extraordinary, have I found it rare? Yeah, I've found it incredibly rare. I have yet to find a single example that I find reliable that demonstrates that a God actually exists, despite continued appeals to people to provide the evidence, and I was a fundamentalist Christian for 25 years, and many appeals on my own to God and then to other gods to present themselves or do something of that kind. I know that's not what we're talking about, but yes, I do find it an extraordinary claim. It ties in with something that John had said about his claim that the natural world plus the supernatural world is always going to be a better answer. Well, sure, it's magic. Magic solves everything. But until you demonstrate that anything supernatural has ever occurred, you cannot assert that it's a better explanation. In fact, it may detract from you finding an actual explanation, something that John seems to think that atheism is guilty of. His example of junk DNA, saying that, oh, we found this junk DNA. Well, guess what, John? It didn't halt science. Science kept going, and science found the flaws in those assumptions. So you're fear-mongering about the end of science as a result of scientists finding junk DNA is one that I just don't understand. But John said a couple of other things. One was that this idea of intelligence and reasoning and ability deserves an explanation. Those are his words. This is the appeal of religious claims and the appeal of claims about gods. Boy, it's really cool to have certainty. It's really cool to no longer have any questions and not be forced to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you say, I don't know, that's how you get to actually knowing. And
that is my argument about just about everything. It's like people have this idea that they have to have an answer. Like there has to be some explanation for it. And then if they don't get that, then they'll just flat out make up something, or they'll already have a preconceived idea in their head about what the answer could be, and then just look for things that might confirm that for them. Oh, well, even though there's all this stuff that's wrong, there's this that's right, so I'm going to acknowledge this. But they don't acknowledge the stuff that goes wrong. Like, I guess it's confirmation bias. I think that's what it's called. But, people need to be more comfortable with saying, I don't know. Like, that was the first step with me becoming a skeptic. Like, the biggest hurdle you have to get past is understanding that you don't know all the answers, or humans don't know all the answers, and it's okay to say I don't know. Once you're able to do that, that's where you can actually start like an actual journey into skepticism.
Those who assert that they know before it's justified are the ones that are halting this progress.
There were a number of things that really bothered them. Number one, they were ticked off that I kept saying, I don't know. They have this mindset that programmed them as to what to expect in this debate. We're claiming God exists and God did it and this is the answer, and you're here to say that that's false and there's some other answer. And if ever they asked things like, do you have an explanation for consciousness? No? You don't? Well, tell me how this happened. I don't know. I'm not convinced any of us know. You're the one claiming to have an answer. Would you like to provide the evidence and the argument to support your actual answer? And if I find it compelling, then I'll agree with you. But my lack of an answer doesn't make your answer correct. This is the mindset of the creationists that go through and try to poke holes in evolution. And even if they poked holes so much that evolution ceased to be a concrete theory, they're not one step closer to proving creationism is true. And man, they got mad. By the third night, I think, Israel, the gentleman I was debating, said, well, every time we ask Matt a question, he just says, I don't know, which is a bit of an exaggeration because there were a lot of things that I did provide my answers for. And the main preacher came up to me at one point and said, doesn't it bother you? Doesn't it bother? Are you happy going to your grave not knowing the answers to these questions?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I am.
I'm not. None of us are. We are all uncomfortable with this idea of not knowing. And that.
All right, let me explain myself. I say I am. And when I say that, I mean, I will go out and look for the answer. But if I never find an answer during my lifetime, I'm not going to, I was about to say lose sleep over it, but I don't think you'd be losing much sleep at that point. But I'm fine with the I don't know answer. I tried to look for it. I couldn't find it. It's not within my power to just make an answer appear. So I don't know. I'm perfectly fine saying I don't know. If I die and I still don't know the answer, well, I tried. I couldn't find it. That's perfectly fine.
That's why we have science. That's why we go out and try to find what the actual damned answer is.
This is what separates Matt from other people.
It's not that I'm comfortable not knowing, it's that I'm more uncomfortable pretending that I know.
Yeah, he like isn't afraid to put his foot down and like.
I'm going to close out here in a second. But I want to tell you
joke about it.
Actually, just read right before here, and it's in Poland. Today or yesterday, a 12-year-old schoolgirl by the name of Maria Kislow was discovered hanging in her room by her mother when she went to read her a bedtime story. And her daughter had left a note that said, "Dear Mom, please don't be sad. I just miss Daddy so much. I want to see him again." Her dad had died in 2009. This 12-year-old girl took her own life sometime this past few days so that she could go to heaven to be with her daddy again. And what the mother said almost killed me if my heart hadn't already been partially broken. Her mother said, "This is so unbearable. If it weren't for the fact that my son was here, I would stop living right now too." Not all religion is the same. We don't want to paint religions with a broad brush. And I'm sure Jason and I have a conversation about religion and evolution, or religion and science, and how much in conflict they are. And we'd have to pause at the very beginning to say, what do we mean by religion? Because religion isn't this monogamous thing, or homogeneous thing. There we go. Use the right word, dumbass. It's, we can't paint with a massively broad brush. But that little girl is one of the reasons that I do what I do. It's one of the reasons why I think other people are wanting to get more involved. It's one of the reasons why I think we've seen so much, our numbers increase so much in the secular movement, and people wanting to get involved in arguing. So go ahead, argue. She can come up here. Go ahead, argue. Get in conversations, be outspoken, avoid, please, please, please avoid the overreaching positions that shift the burden of proof, making broad claims like, well, Jesus never existed. Might be true, might not be. It's not necessarily the best place to start, but there's no reason to go there. Don't run when they're not chasing you. Don't shift the burden of proof. Let them try to do it so that you can point out that they've done it. Oh, God's an invented fiction, and here's these various biblical interpretations and views that almost nobody holds, but I'm going to argue against them anyway. Ask the person what they believe and why. Get to know them. Engage. Be skeptical. Be reasonable.
I'm going to explain that also. Yeah, whenever you have a debate with somebody, it's always best to start off by getting what their definition of something is. If you happen to have a question about it, ask them and try to figure out what it is. I did a video not too long ago. Well, it was actually a minute ago. It was a video on Al Bundy. I think it was Al Bundy's best insults. I think I did 2 Al Bundy videos, so I think it's that one. And towards the end of it, I said that Al Bundy is somebody that falls on the exception list as far as white privilege is concerned. And people heard me say white privilege, and I guess they automatically assumed that I meant it in a certain, like in the way that they hear most people use it. But nobody bothered to stop and ask me, okay, what did you mean by white privilege? Because then I would explain what my definition of white privilege is and what I think most people really mean when they say white privilege. A lot of times people will say it and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And a lot of times they'll say something stupid that makes no sense. And thus people just brush off the entire argument as a whole. If you want to see my definition of white privilege, watch my video, Bo Burnham, straight white male. I explain it towards the end what my definition of white privilege is. White privilege is just an acknowledgement of difference in statistics. That is it. Based on a lot of times prejudice and just interpretation. Somebody that's walking down the street, compared from a white person compared to a black person, it's more likely the black person is going to be looked at as more of a possible threat than a white person. So you'll perceive them as a threat more so. And then when it comes to like doing something based on that judgment, you're more likely to treat them that way. If a cop is waiting on the side of the road and they see a black person and a white person drive by, they're more likely to think that the white person or the black person might have a reason to get pulled over than the white person. That doesn't mean that the white person is completely innocent or anything like that. It doesn't mean that cops don't pull over white people at all. It's just based on numbers. Black people do get pulled over at a certain rate more than white people do. White privilege is just an acknowledgement of that. There's other privileges as well. There's black privileges out there too. If your white person goes down the street, it's more likely that a white person, or if a white person goes down the street in a hood or a ghetto, it's more likely that the white person is going to get harassed or seen as less of a threat to somebody that might be trying to, rob them or something like that than a black person is. That would be an example of black privilege. There are other privileges as well. Only thing a privilege means is an acknowledgement of statistical differences. That is it. So anybody that thinks, oh, well, you just don't know what I've been through because you have white privilege. That's not what white privilege is. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Laugh at them and move on. Don't even hold a conversation with them because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Or educate them on what it really means and then walk off after you done drop the mic on their ass. But bottom line is I just wanted to explain that. If you want to see my full definition of it, go and watch that video. I explain it much better than I do here. But hopefully that gives you guys an idea of what I was talking about and the idea of why you want to get someone's definition of a word before you just start judging them, because then you just start straw manning their argument and it hurts your own argument in the end. But let's get back into it.
Confidence in yourself, but doubt everything you believe and question everything. Be compassionate. We were all worth it. Be honest. You don't know everything. You're not me. And I don't know everything. Be caring towards people, which doesn't mean that you cannot be ruthless and relentless in attacking their positions, as long as you do it honestly and surgically and are clear that on many occasions I have violated this rule. On the show, I have said you're a moron. And what I mean by that is in this situation, on this subject, you are being moronic. And I don't look at it as an attack on that person's entire character. I realize they do, which is why I'm adding this little caveat and cautioning others. I realize that they do. My thing is we're all morons about something at some point. And it's a shorthand for me to say, oh, you're being a moron, or you are a moron. And I'm trying to change some of that without getting any softer, because religions, by and large, at least the versions that I tend to speak out about, are vile and disgusting and harmful and poisoning the universe in which we live. And I will never, ever try to play nice about the actual ideas and the harm they do, because that 12-year-old girl didn't need to die. Ridiculous ideas are by definition deserving of ridicule. Some people will take it personally. There's not always something you can do about that and still make the point, because some of those people are offended that you and I even exist, or that we won't sit quietly in the corner with our damn mouth shut. How dare you? I'm way over time, aren't I? Anyway, I was just like a lot of those people. I was a Rush Limbaugh, ditto head, fundamentalist, Southern Baptist, occasionally going to Pentecostal churches because that's where the good music was, Bible thumping, horribly backslidden, couldn't care less about Christianity, just like everybody else. There's a vicious circle going on there. And my thoughts were my own. And I was able to find my way out despite religious indoctrination, despite all of the fallacies, despite all of the pollution, and so can other people. And what they need is more voices. They need to get to know more atheists. They need to realize that half of the people that they know who they think are just, maybe spiritual or whatever, they're atheists. The guy that's picking up your garbage and the guy that's operating on your heart, they're probably atheists. Actually, the more scientific careers, the higher educated the job is, the more likely that they're going to be atheists. And that's something we need to fix too, which is why I'm after the rednecks. And I'm serious. I'm dead serious. That's my target. Fundamentalists, literalists, and rednecks, because I'm tired of Jesus take the wheel if I turn on country radio. I want to hear something that's better than that. I want to be able to say, look, Taylor Swift doesn't believe, because never mind. Go out and argue, and remember that you're dealing with people, and that it's okay to go right after the argument. But you might have to put a little, like butter on the wound afterwards, and let them know that you're doing this because you actually care about them and about what kind of world you live in and what kind of world you leave behind. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and leave a link that will take you to Agatan Foundation's channel, and you can watch more of their videos. They have a lot of different versions of these people as well as others. This is just part one of one of Matt Dillahunty's arguments. This clip didn't have any clips from Atheist Experience, so like I said, if you go out there and look for that, you will find those too. Just like this little icon on the corner right here, you'll find something exactly like this in this video if you go to the last 30 seconds. So if you don't know how to get to their channel, there will be a link that'll let you subscribe to them within the video, or you can click on it and go to their channel and watch the videos, like, subscribe, and all that stuff. Yeah, when it comes to arguments, we also have to be very careful in regards to letting our emotions get the better of us. As I sip my tea, I have been doing some videos in regards to the recent Michael Jackson allegations and things like that. And these are things that I've been following for a very long time. I do have a part 2 to my discussing Michael Jackson video that I will be doing. That'll probably be the last time I actually address it, at least for the foreseeable future. And both sides tend to fall in the emotional argument. The people that tend to be the rational ones, the ones that are looking into it the same way I would look into religious claims, for example, they tend to be the ones that fall under the defense of Michael Jackson, because as of right now, the arguments against him are claims, and just like he said, claims are not evidence. They are just that, a claim. They have not yet met their burden of proof. So once the burden of proof has been met, then you can go ahead and, be convinced or unconvinced. But even then, that doesn't necessarily mean that something is true or not. It just means that you personally have been convinced of it. But like I said, both sides tend to fall under emotions. On the Michael Jackson side, there's a lot of people that will start using insults and name calling, and they'll dismiss people just by saying things like "do the research." I feel like if you have a proper defense of your argument, you don't have to tell someone to go out and do the research. You can go and convince them using or not convince them, but you can put up a good argument based on what has convinced you. If you're just flat out name calling people or using facts that aren't true, like one fact, for example, and I know a lot of people watching this probably don't know anything about the Michael Jackson thing and probably don't give a damn about it. So at this point, the video is over. You can go ahead and click on something else. But when it comes to arguments of things that aren't true, like the 10-year FBI investigation, the FBI investigation was not 10 years consistently. It was 2 separate investigations where they were assisting the Santa Barbara Police Department, and it was stretched out over 10 years. There wasn't really any investigation in between that. It was just like a couple years in the beginning and a couple years towards the end of that 10-year span. The whole argument that Evan Chandler killed himself out of guilt, that has not been proven ever in any place. Jordan Chandler coming out and saying that he lied, that is another thing that is false. So whenever somebody uses these type of arguments in a debate, it makes me cringe, because you flat out have destroyed whatever argument you could have presented that was true. And the other side tends to get emotional because I feel like as of right now, there's this Me2 thing going and this believe victims argument, which the whole believe victims thing, I think, is absolutely horrible as far as logical standpoint and rational standpoints. You don't believe someone simply because they made a claim. You'd never do that. That is bad in every single argument. It makes society no different than if we were living in the Salem witch hunt trial. Somebody makes a claim and then you just judge someone and condemn them just based on that claim. There's a reason why we live in the societies we live in now. Everything should be based on investigating and taking a claim seriously, but also holding it against its criticism to see if it can still stand. And like I said, the Me2 movement, I feel like it has this momentum going for it that has a lot of people just believing stuff that people claim simply because it's claimed, despite the fact that Michael has had people in the past come out and make claims against him that were proven to be liars. I remember a specific episode of Hard Copy where they were investigating somebody that made a claim that Michael Jackson had molested them. And then towards the end of the show, they had come up with evidence, as well as the kid who made the claim had come out and said somebody actually made them make these claims, and was I think they were willing to pay them to make the claims. So when Diane Dimond went out and met with the person, they broke down and admitted that it was all fake. So it does happen. I know people, I'm not going to say any names because I don't think they want to be talked about in this regard, but I know people who have had claims put against them that were in fact false, that I know was false. And the person who made the claim, I suspect they did it out of revenge or to get back at somebody. I know people who will make claims of a lot of things just to get back at somebody, whether it's somebody being the father of a child or the mother of a child. Well, I guess somebody can't really come out and claim to not be the mother of a kid. But yeah, I mean, you can watch just about any daytime show and see people making claims that somebody did something to a kid or whatever, and it turns out that it wasn't true. A lot of people, especially on the defense of the accusers, they will say that statistically, there are hardly ever any cases where people come out and lie about something like that. But I think that what they don't tend to take into account is the reason that number tends to be high is because a lot of times people will just accept the accusation and then just try to get past it. There are people that, like, when they get accused of something like that, might settle for like a plea deal or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily come out that the person was lying. It just gets pushed under the rug pretty much. The case that I was referring to where somebody was accused and it was in fact a lie, they ended up settling with a plea deal because they were afraid of the possibility of going to jail. The idea of somebody coming out and accusing somebody of abusing them in any way, I mean, it's pretty much an argument against hearsay. And a lot of times when in those type of situations, people will take hearsay and believe it. If I got accused of like raping somebody, I mean, I would argue against the claims and fight against the claims too, of course. But if it seems like people are just believing them and my freedom is at stake, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I really don't. But like I said, there have been people that have done settlements and things like that just to get past it. Now, by no means am I saying Michael Jackson is 100% innocent, because I don't know. The only way you would absolutely know that is if you were in the room with Michael Jackson at every single second of his life. The exact same thing would be said for people that think that he's 100% guilty. There's no way of knowing unless you were in the room with him 100% of his life. Only thing we can do is base everything on the evidence that can be presented to us and things like that. And so far, there hasn't really been any evidence that goes one way or the other. I will go much more in depth with it when the time comes and I make my second part of my discussing Michael Jackson video. But I just want to make sure everybody understands as far as like debates, not just in Michael Jackson or religion or anything, but like everything, you should always base your opinion on rational arguments. I would recommend studying up fallacious arguments and different types of fallacies, because a lot of people will fall straight into them. Argument from ignorance is a big one, so really you should start there. But yeah, like I said, both sides tend to fall into it. The Michael Jackson's in it. I will have people come at me, somebody who identifies as a Michael Jackson fan, even though I did become a Michael Jackson fan because of the trial. I believed he was guilty at first also, but after actually studying the case, I eventually changed my opinion and started to become a fan of the person himself, the actual man behind the music. And I would have to say Michael Jackson's probably the person that made me a skeptic, a person that like goes out and looks up evidence and looks up the rational argument side of something first before actually like flat out believing it. Like, I would have to say my skeptic origins comes from that Michael Jackson trial, ironically. So Michael Jackson in a lot of ways has made me the person I am today. And I've said that before. Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Bruce Lee are probably my biggest influences in my life. But yeah, if you happen to have any discussions, it doesn't have to be about Michael Jackson, because like I said, this video isn't necessarily about him. This is about the argument that people use in debates. And the reason I use Michael Jackson was because that was a debate that I was having very recently. If you want to discuss Michael Jackson, like I said, we'll have a video for that coming out soon. Or you can go to my first one, the Discussing Michael Jackson Part 1, and leave your arguments there. If you happen to have any discussions about intellectuals or people that do debates and things like that, and you want me to check somebody out, you can leave it in the description box down below. Not description box, the comment section down below. I should have a message in the beginning letting you guys know to watch the original video first, so that you can get the original content creator a view and they can continue to make ad revenue on their videos. So be sure to check that out before you watch my reactions. At this point, you've already seen the reaction, so hopefully you've already seen it. And that's pretty much it. So I'm Devon DaVinci. You've just been a little bit more enlightened. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. If you've been here this long, I hope you would hit that like button. Possibly subscribe and share if you want to. But that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and see you guys in my next video. I look forward to seeing you there. I'm going to give you the deuces. And until then, I'm signing out. Peace.